this my girl's kind of like in the background, and I've never done a video with somebody watching me before, so I'm kind of, if I break out laughing, that's why. I'm going to be doing a video just kind of explaining the existentialist concept of authenticity versus inauthenticity, and talk mostly about Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre, but also go a little bit into Simone de Beauvoir and Albert Camus. That's the plan. So as for Heidegger, two books I think are very important to read on him is, of course, Being in Time. That's the main one. The second one, History of the Concept of Time. The secondary resource on Heidegger would be Hubert Dreyfus, Being in the World, which is kind of like, it's basically like going over his little hyphenated words, which kind of explains what stuff like being in the world is, or being in is, and stuff, weird stuff like that. So he kind of, but it's about a lot of different things. So in my opinion, this is the best one, the best secondary source about Heidegger himself. And so as for Sartre, this is the main work to read by him. He wrote a lot of plays, and he also wrote a book called Nausea, which I got right here somewhere. He wrote plays, and wrote another book called Saint-Genet, which I have yet to read. It's also somewhere around here. Some secondary resources on Sartre. I like that one a lot. This isn't about Sartre himself, but it's about the topic of existentialism, and this is another one that I really like, and I got a lot more. But what is the concept of authenticity within existentialism? Existentialism was a kind of philosophy, or a system of, I guess, theories. I wouldn't call it that, because they kind of these people wanted to go against the grain, go against everybody else. They didn't want to define themselves or define anything, but they talked about existence and things like dread and anxiety and sadness and nothingness. So they were kind of somewhat downers, but they're still definitely one of my favorite groups of thinkers. As for the first one, I'll talk about Heidegger. Martin Heidegger was a student of Edmund Husserl. Husserl was the founder of the modern use of the word phenomenology, and Husserl kind of had, I have a ton of videos on Husserl, so I guess the whole thing with phenomenology is existentialism kind of grew out of phenomenology. It came with Heidegger and Sartre, and that's when we get people like Simone de Beauvoir, Albert Camus, and a lot of other ones that have come out and written books that, you know, are like theirs since then. But Heidegger wrote Being in Time actually in an attempt to keep his chair of the program. I forget what university, so he was writing that in order to keep his position, because somebody who's chair of a philosophy department has to have something published. But so he kind of published that, but he only published the first division, and didn't really get the chance to finish or even publish the second one, or the second part, I mean. So in his philosophy, you have the unit of consciousness, or the human existence, called Dasein, which in German literally translates to being there. Also being in the world, which is like a structure which represents the state of human consciousness, the state of human existence in this world. and he kind of characterizes it in his writing, being in time, by looking at who we all are ontologically, and basically trying to understand existence as it is, and how this relates to authenticity, and what authenticity is. I'll get to in a second. But he was trying to uncover the meaning of being. He was trying to understand what being itself is, and what being for us is. And for him, being in the world didn't mean that I'm here and that over there is that. We're all linked up. I'm linked up. I'm in a way linked up with that lamp over there because I can have a interaction with it by looking at it, and we're in a way in all the same thing. Because in the same way, if I'm talking to another person, that's we're not apart. We're all the same because we're in the same thing, and that's a bad way of explaining it. And in other places, I explain that way better. But in a way, the human condition, the state of human existence is linked up with everything else, rather than, So in a way, it is a realism, but that's another matter. So what is authenticity? Authenticity kind of became a more broad concept. I think it became a more usable and more applied concept with Sartre. But for Heidegger, authenticity or inauthenticity, I forget the German words for that. Inauthenticity is fleeing away from who you are, or denying something of yourself, and he calls it fleeing into the face of yourself, because you're trying to deny or get away from something that you are, but you can't, because you're of course yourself. And he's trying to explain in multiple sections that through our projection, we have a projection on the world, and we have the freedom to change our potentiality by looking at our facticity. And what facticity means, facticity is one's current situation, and the potentiality is what could be. So we can look at our facticity and try to make a different future, basically. And if one wants to reject a part of who they are, whether it be the fact that you're going to die, being towards death is not something that we all have. Being towards death is something he talks about in the second division of Being in Time a lot, and that's that we are all going to die, and being in a state of being, which is being towards death, is living with the understanding that there will come a day where you will die. And there are people who try to deny that, and will, let's say you're doing a lot of hard drugs, and you're not really taking in the facts that could kill you sooner rather than later. So authenticity, if you are rejecting the fact that you will in one day die, then you are in a state of inauthenticity, because you are rejecting a part of your being. Also, if you and Sartre talks about this more, if you hate any part of yourself, and you try to become something else, that's what he calls bad faith. It's translated into either bad faith or self-deception. And about the nothing, in Heidegger's essay Was ist Metaphysik, or what is metaphysics, he talks about how the nothing can intermingle with being, or how non-being can intermingle with being, and through angst or dread, that's how that happens. And fear versus angst. Fear is a concept given by Heidegger, which it's like if you see a big huge spider in the bathtub, you know what you are afraid of, and you want the whole reaction in that whole thing is to run away. So fear, you know what's causing the fear, and you're going to try and figure out what to do about it. Angst or dread or despair. There's a lot of different words for that. Angst, anxiety, dread, despair, sickness unto death. If you're Kierkegaard, that's for one thing. Angst is when you are in a state of unrest. So it's like you're in a state of fear, but you have no way of knowing what causes it. You have no way of knowing how it's occurring. And this is all, according to Heidegger, this is all a part of yourself. And a way that this can happen, angst or dread, is inauthenticity itself, by rejecting a part of yourself or rejecting a fact of your own being. And that's one of the things that can cause a state of angst, or in German you pronounce it Angst. Being as care, in the last part of the first division, he talks about being as care. He talks about what he calls care structure, and that's mostly that care defines who we are, and care. What is meant by care is that we have concern for things. We have concern that, in our lives we're not just in our lives and we do nothing. We don't just do whatever. We have concern for things. We have concern meaning that we are going to go to work because we need money. We're gonna clean the house because we don't want bugs. We're gonna do this or that because of a certain reason. Our being is defined by care, in that we have concern for things. We have concern for others. That's being towards others, or solicitude is one translation of one German word having to do with care for care for others. But this all has to do with, all these things have to do with authenticity, because he's trying to uncover the meaning of being itself. And if you're going to try to reject a part of yourself, being free and changing your potentiality or your future for the better is going to be impeded by rejecting a part of your own being, and thus being inauthentic to yourself. And I went to Sartre. The being for itself and the being for others. The being for itself is that you are going to be yourself and not fall into what Heidegger calls everybody in the world the they. And if you are for yourself, being for itself for Sartre is, and if you are for yourself, being for itself for Sartre is not being a part of everybody else, trying to get away from everybody else, being unique, individualistic, while the being for others is blending in to what Heidegger calls the they, or the everybody else. So if you're for yourself, and Sartre says that other is that other is prior to self. But if you are going to flee from the everyone else and be unique and yourself primarily, then you are in a state of bad faith or inauthenticity or self deception. On the other hand, if you're being for others, if you are blending in with the people or the they, and thus you are not recognizing that there is a unique self in there, then you are also in a state of bad faith. So what are you supposed to do, you might ask Sartre? The answer isn't really that good, because you're basically supposed to do both, but not be the being for itself by itself, or the being for others by itself. You're supposed to do both while not doing either one. So that's difficult to explain. So you are being also Sartre says that you are being inauthentic, just like Heidegger says, if you are neglecting or fleeing from a part of your being. In doing either of these is that. Now, finally, about Simone de Beauvoir, she has a book called Ethics of Ambiguity, and in that book she explains that life is very ambiguous, meaning that we can try to do a lot of different projects, a lot of different things in our life to try to, again with the whole facticity thing, use our facticity to change our potentiality or our future for the better, but the external weight of the world crushes all of that and basically makes our life ambiguous, because why are we going to keep on going if things keep on getting ruined and everything just is done because we can't keep on going, because everything that we try to do gets ruined. So, and there's a better way to explain that too, but her solution is to accept the fact that the world and your existence itself is very ambiguous. You should live knowing that, still try to do things and be free in understanding that, and live knowing that. So if you are also in a case of bad faith or inauthenticity, if you are not recognizing that your life and the world itself are ambiguous. Now, with Albert Camus, his book, The Myth of Sisyphus, talks about this myth about how this guy is rolling a huge boulder up a hill, and every time he gets the boulder to the top, it rolls back down, and he has to do it all over again. So he's in this constant struggle of rolling up, falling back down, and he has to do it all over again. So it's just this constant struggle and that's a metaphor for life, because Camus says that life is very absurd in that. And one thing he asks you at the beginning of that book is, the biggest question of philosophy is whether to commit suicide or not, whether life is worth living or not. So another thing that you have to do is you have to recognize that life is absurd, and that you are essentially the guy rolling up the boulder up the hill. So if you think I messed me up, or especially about this, I think I might have butchered some of this stuff about Heidegger. So if you think I messed something up or left something out, comment below. Let me know.